There's not one guy, one person in the history of this program that's bigger than the program.
Welcome to the Program Roundup podcast. I am your host for the day, not Patrick Hertzberger, Mark Hall, joined by Matt Gann and Mason Prince, two absolute program guys, the prototypes really when it comes down to it for the program. We are here only because of thefanstop.com, and that's our best partner. You have got to go check out their officially licensed College Game Day Shirt of the Month Club. It is a new shirt, long sleeve hoodie sent to your door every month on the dot, and these look good, they feel good. As I said, they're officially licensed. There's like 50 something schools on there. Patrick knows the number, but I think we keep saying 50. And while you're there and you're signing up, you absolutely need to use our code PGUYZ. That's PGUYZ, and that's going to get you 15% off your first 3 months with that College Game Day Shirt of the Month Club, and we'll get you 15% off their new game day polos. Again, these are officially licensed. There's no silly markup. They feel good. They look good. It is a great thing. We really appreciate the guys over at the Fan Stop. It wouldn't be the same if they weren't good people, and these are good people. So, highest recommendation that you go check out what they're offering. Thefanstop.com, again, 15% off anything in the store. Basically, kind of. I don't know that for sure, but 15% off your 3 months of subscription and your game day polo with our code PGUYZ, PGUYZ. Guys, opening thoughts on week 6 in college football.
What a fun weekend, man. What a fun weekend of college football. It's so much fun now that we're in conference play because it feels like the games just get more escalated and more important. Just, we'll get into these games obviously, but Alabama, Texas A&M was a fun one. LSU, Mizzou was wild to end it. You had the Miami game late. Miami just falling apart mentally. Mario Cristobal, what are you doing? You had USC going to triple overtime, needing a Caleb Williams miracle to win. You obviously have OU Texas, a fun game down in Dallas. Just a great weekend of college football.
You mentioned, or you didn't even mention some of the upsets as well that we'll get into too. Notre Dame, Washington State, both not playing.
I got a thought on that, Matt. I'm glad you mentioned that, but I have a thought on that when we get to that. I have a thought on that. We can,
but like Mason said, a lot of exciting games, especially the 11 a.m. slate, and then obviously a couple of late night blunders in the Pac-12. So really good. I feel like the college football landscape, we've kind of tried to figure out, there's not the 4 best teams or that one major team. I think Georgia took one step up this week in their demolish of Kentucky, but really 2 through 10, even maybe to 15. I think it's wildly out in the air of who could possibly make it to the playoff. I think this is going to be a really, really fun college football year heading into conference play, as like Mason said.
Well, and we'll start the show a little bit differently this week with no Patrick's sultry, smooth voice to guide us through the conferences. We're going to go through the top 25 as it stands, as it came out in the AP poll, and we're going to group these teams up and just have conversations about it. So let's start with the first 4, the presumed CFP top 4 if we started today. That's Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Ohio State 3, Florida State 4. All 4 of them defeated their opponents fairly convincingly by the end, unless you guys have anything to disagree with there. Don't see any reason why any of those teams would have dropped. So clearly Georgia is still Georgia. I think Michigan rightfully stays at 2, and Ohio State's going to figure something out, it seems like.
Yeah, Ohio State is going to figure it out somehow, some way. That Michigan game towards the end of the year is just going to be beyond intriguing. I think it's the last weekend in November. I'm sure everybody's got that game circled. Look, the thing with Georgia is everybody wants them to not be the new blue blood of college football. And I think we're looking for any crack in the armor that we can find with them. And the fact of the matter is this: they recruit well, they develop talent well, and they can beat whoever you roll out there just with how much better they are physically than you. I think Georgia's number one, and they should be number one. But yeah, Michigan has a case. You can if you debated with me, like if Matt told me that Michigan needed to be the number one team in the country and Georgia number two, I wouldn't be upset about it. I think Michigan has shown what they've needed to show for sure. In Florida State, I don't really know what to make out of them because I just don't know what to make out of the ACC as a whole. I just don't know. I think they're very talented and I think they're a good team, but I'm not sure yet.
I also think that Georgia has to be a number one. Like reigning national championship, you got to take them down
2 times.
You.
Yeah.
When they look like this, you got to take them out before they shouldn't be number one. Matt?
Yeah, I feel like the same old story with Kentucky. They always start out like 4 or 5-0, and then they play some kind of powerhouse SEC school, and then they become super fraudulent, super quick. Listen, love Mark Stoops, what he's done there in Kentucky. He'll probably have that job forever just based on the number of wins he does get each year and year out. But they always do this every year. They always overhype Kentucky. You saw what happened, Georgia taking care of business, obviously Michigan as well. Ohio State was actually only up by 3 points on Maryland, which was the big noon kickoff for that game. Obviously pulled away with 17 points in the fourth quarter, but Maryland was hanging in there with them for the majority of the game. So I think when Ohio State plays a Penn State or a Michigan, I think we'll truly understand how good that Ohio State team is. But I think clearly Georgia is a step above the rest. The rest of the field is, I think, wide open at this point.
The Big Ten is just going to cannibalize itself at some point with all the teams that Matt just rattled off. Eventually, that's just what's going to happen. And whoever ends out on top is the team that's going to be in the playoff. It's just that's what we're leading to. And I think it's just getting to the end of November for a lot of these teams and just seeing where we're at.
Well, and speaking of teams cannibalizing themselves, one, let's set OU and Texas aside. We had a damn near hour-long podcast last night about that game, and while it was incredible, it was a lot of fun. A couple of us were there. You can go find our thoughts there, and Mason, I'll let you get to it this week on the regular podcast, okay?
Perfect, yeah, I love it.
So we'll look at the back half of the top 10 here, and I'm going to call it Penn State and all that Pac-12 shit. And so we start with number 6, Penn State and Nittany Lions. They off their bye week this week, so not really a chance to move up or down too much on their own merit. Washington Huskies, same thing on a bye. Oregon Ducks, same thing on a bye. Number 9 is Texas. I didn't mention Oklahoma's number 5 earlier, but 5 and 9. Mm-hmm. And then number 10, USC. You mentioned them, Mason. Really a dog fight in the end to pull it out. Too good Arizona team.
I mean, this is just who USC is, right? Like this is who they are. And we know this. And whether it feels like it's unapologetically who they are at this point, right? It's just, we're going to score points, see if you can keep up. And this is the Lincoln Riley formula to success. And we've seen it before and it works. It'll win you games. Will it win you games easily? No. Will it win you games easily against teams that you should dominate? No. That's because their defensive side of the ball, there's a ton that remains to be seen. They were down 17-0 at one point and, getting smacked in the mouth by an Arizona team who, all due respect, is struggling. They're not the best Arizona team. They're not a world beater out there in the Pac-12, but I don't think it's Oklahoma bias or anything like that to say that USC has some problems and to think that they're just going to waltz to a Pac-12 title. They're going to have a lot of issues with Oregon in a hot minute. They got some issues to deal with.
I think, man, let me listen to these two, or let me read you these two quotes real fast. You don't want to put yourself in that hole, Riley said, but when you're in it, you can feel sorry for yourself or you can dig yourself out. That's Lincoln Riley after the game when they won. Now here's Caleb Williams. They kept dropping off. They left me with big lanes. I know I haven't ran this year much. Don't really like to run, to be honest with you, but you've got to do what you've got to do. Just doing my job, whatever it takes to win a game. That doesn't sound like a couple dudes who are happy with their team's performance, with what it takes to overcome a now 500 Arizona team At home? At home? That's tough. And it seems to be, you mentioned it's not just Oklahoma fans. I think seeing it happen at USC is confirming what a lot of Oklahoma fans have said out loud since seeing him leave, is that something about the way he builds it just doesn't work. And it works against Arizona because your offensive firepower can overcome, but it doesn't work when you get to, like, they're playing Notre Dame next week. Notre Dame's going to be upset about the way that they just played. And I'm not sure USC has the dogs on defense to keep that game, within reason. Notre Dame should score every time down. Estime should run over everyone. So that's my USC thoughts. Any Pac-12 thoughts in general, Matt?
I'll just say, USC, not only do they have Notre Dame next week, they have Utah the following week. Then they play California, not so great. But then they end the season playing Washington, Oregon, and UCLA. Talk about a
Not a
tough
cakewalk.
stretch. Not a cakewalk at all. And some of those teams, Utah, Washington, Oregon, playing great defense. So, their record down the stretch, they could easily lose 4 or 5 of those games, especially in a row. That's really tough. But similar to the Pac-10, they're all going to have to play each other. And it'll be interesting to see who ends up in the Big 12 championship. But USC has got a dogfight the next month and a half, playing some of these teams who were obviously playing really well in Washington and Oregon. Penn State 2 weeks from now, they're going to Ohio State. So we'll get a true barometer of how that Penn State team is playing. And then Notre Dame coming off a pretty bad loss to Louisville. All credit to Louisville for pulling up the upset. Everyone kept talking about Sam Harmon playing pretty good, the transfer from Wake Forest to Notre Dame. Everyone kept talking Notre Dame needed a quarterback. They went out and get one, a pretty big one in the transfer portal, and pretty much came up well short. Did not look like the Sam Hartman of old at Wake Forest in that Notre Dame offense. Again, didn't get to see too much of it, but not great before you have to go play USC next week. And you're going to have to put up 30 to 40 points probably if you're on to beat USC, which probably won't be as much of a challenge when the Arizona State guy went 303, 5 touchdowns, and their running back also had well over 100 yards. So it's probably going to be a shootout.
Yeah, it's fun the way that Matt is able to just preempt the entire next part of it, because the next 4 teams are SEC country. We got number 11 Alabama. They defeat Texas A&M at Kyle Field 26-20. North Carolina at number 12. They beat Syracuse 40-7. Not close. Drake May runs the game, 442 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ole Miss beats Arkansas 27-20. I'm very sorry, Mason. And as Matt got into, Louisville just takes it to Notre Dame at home. Jawar Johnson, the running back for Louisville, is a dog and really took it to that Notre Dame defense. So, Mason, any thoughts on those 4 teams, any of those, or how they stand within college football?
I'm pretty sure Louisville was a 6.5 point underdog, if I'm not mistaken. I think the wrong team was favored. I think the wrong team was favored. I truly do. When that line came out, I thought the wrong team was Louisville's a good football team, man. And that's not a knock on. I'm not knocking Notre Dame right now. Louisville's a good football team. They didn't upset anybody. They deserved to win that game, and they should have won that game, and they did. Louisville's a good football team, and the ACC is going to be really interesting with Florida State and Clemson if they can figure out what the hell is going on over there. And then Louisville. And even Miami could cause some noise as well. We'll get to Miami in a little bit, I'm sure. But that was interesting to me. Arkansas's got issues, man. Ole Miss did not deserve to win that game. They tried to give Arkansas every opportunity to win that game, and Arkansas just couldn't. Watch out for Alabama, because Alabama currently controls their own destiny to the SEC title game. And that's a team that I can promise you, even with the offensive line struggles and quarterback struggles that they've had, you don't want to see that Alabama team in December. Period, point blank. You don't. You just don't want to see them. I can promise you that.
Totally.
That was the
agree.
only team.
Any final thoughts on those guys, Matt? those four
I was
teams?
going to say, the only team I was going to talk about is Alabama. Probably the best offensive performance from their quarterback, who obviously they've been trying to figure out who's going to be playing for them. Jalen Milroe went 21-33, 321, 3 touchdowns, and finding his probably the next great Alabama wide receiver, Jermaine Burton, 9 receptions, 197,
Crazy.
and 2 tutties. So this is the performance that Nick Saban needed, especially going on the road to a very hostile and violent Kyle Field, obviously a few years back, losing that game in a bad upset. A lot of people had A&M to win this game. I think rightfully so. Nick
Their line
Saban
moved
shows
so heavily towards A&M towards the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a Nick Saban classic. Everyone's going against him. Everything's going bad. Has his team ready to play, and probably will have his team ready to play for the rest of this year. So probably the best performance by Alabama so far.
Awesome. The next grouping is a group of 5, and it's called Duke and the rest of the Pac-12 bullshit. So we start with number 15, Oregon State. They defeat Utah 21-7. Utah, number 16, loses to Oregon State 7-21. Nice that they just go back to back. That's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Duke at 17. They lose to Notre Dame, last week, I guess? Yeah, they were idle this week. Apologies. And UCLA defeats number 19, Washington State, 25-17 to take number 18. Any thoughts on those games other than the obvious 2-for-2 cannibalization happening in the Pac-12 there?
I want to go back because I knew we were getting to these Pac-12 teams. They only take you don't have divisions in the Pac-12 anymore. So they take the top 2 teams to the Pac-12 title game. USC has 5 more games on their schedule with current ranked top 25 teams. There's not a guarantee that USC's walking into the Pac-12 title game, folks. Like Mark said, cannibalization is real, but if you drop 2 games in the Pac-12, that might be your death sentence. That might be it. I feel like you can only drop one.
That don't.
Yeah, I feel like you can only drop one. I think Oregon State's feisty. They're a fun team to watch. DJ Uyunga. Oh my gosh, DJ. Whatever. We're just not even.
You've been so good at that.
I know.
Before.
I know. I was when we started this pod like 2 years ago. I was great at it, and now I'm
dynamite.
Just DJ Uyunga. He's fun out there, man. But yeah, the Pac-12 is just, it's unique, man. It's so funny. The year that this conference is dying, it's arguably the most entertaining conference in college football this year. It's so funny.
If this year had happened last year, none of the same realignment happens. And they're talking about how great the TV deals are going to be for the Pac-12 because those teams are just on fire. Crazy turn of events out there. Matt, any thoughts on that group of 5 before we move on?
Yeah, probably the best group of quarterbacks from those teams. You think about Oregon State, Washington State with Cameron Ward's playing really, really well. Obviously USC, Oregon and Bo Nix, Washington with Penix. I mean, these are some Heisman candidates that will potentially be in New York at the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see who takes up that step, eventually gets to the Pac-12 championship, because one of those guys, or maybe even 2, will end up in New York and a potential Heisman with all these games left on the schedule. So the Pac-12, which no one figured, ends up having the best group of quarterbacks and the best teams so far this year.
Awesome. We're going to move on there unless you guys have any final thoughts on that group of teams. Nope. Awesome. We're going to go to this group of 3, which I affectionately call the fraudsters. So tied with Wazoo at 19 is Tennessee. They had a bye week this week. Number 21, Notre Dame, as we discussed, loses to Louisville 33-13. And number 22, the LSU Tigers pull it out against Mizzou late in the game, 49-39. Hey, Williams-Brinery, get in touch with us. You guys have any thoughts on those games right there? Those teams.
Matt, you go first. I always start. You go first, Matt.
Yeah, I'll just say Jay Daniels had a Heisman performance in Missouri. That game was back to back. I mean, I was watching the scoreboard at the OU Texas game, and it was Missouri up, LSU coming back, and it looked like it was back and forth the third and fourth quarter. His stats, and he just put his team on the back, on his back. So congrats to Jaden Daniels and LSU. Heck of a ball game that he played, but they still got some tough tests to row. They still got to play Bama. I think that's going to be a heck of a match between Jaden Daniels and Jalen Milroe when we get there.
I hope for LSU fans' sake that our Brian Kelly talk is nothing but incorrect, because all it's making me do is believe more and more in what we've talked about the past few weeks about Brian Kelly. Yeah, you won the game, but did you really? Did you really? They don't look impressive. And like Matt said, that schedule at the back half of the season, man, I don't know, dude. I just don't know about them. And Notre Dame, people want us to believe in Notre Dame so bad, and they can be a top 25 team for certain. Absolutely. They could even be a top 15 team. I can guarantee you that. But man, I don't know if they have the skill players and the bodies to compete with the big dogs. I just don't know if they do. And that's not to say that Marcus Freeman can't get those guys. Maybe he flips a switch and they do that down the road. But right, this iteration of this team is not it. It's just not. Like I said, I thought Louisville should have been favored in that game, and not surprised that they won. But yeah, just interesting.
Very interesting. I agree with you. I think that Notre Dame every year is sort of given the same treatment that a good USC team, a good UT team, a good Oklahoma team is given, where, yeah, you get a few point bump. You just kind of do. And it makes sense because that's a blue blood. You should expect them to do well, but we got years of evidence that Notre Dame is actually a 3-loss team, a 2-loss team, more consistently than they are like a playoff team. That's just what it is there. And maybe Marcus Freeman can turn it around. Any final thoughts on that grouping of teams, guys? The fraudsters.
To your point, though, Mark, I'm okay with Notre Dame getting a points bump at the beginning of the year, or even with a couple early season wins. I'm fine with that. You're Notre Dame. You're a blue blood. Your name's up there in the annals of college football history. Fine. I understand that. That's a right word, isn't it?
No, it's a great word.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I know that it's a funny word.
It's all about the annals of college football history here.
It's the pronunciation that makes it not weird.
All we do on the program roundup is talk about players who can make their way into the annals of college football history. You know?
That's right.
100%.
The only way to do it.
They really want to be able to gape their way into the annals of college football history. 100%.
Absolutely did not fit there. God dang it. Gape their way.
No, yeah, that fits. Okay, I'm done.
Leave it in.
I'm done.
Continue.
I'm done. Notre Dame deserves credit at the beginning of the season, but once they drop a few games like they've done, or a couple games, I think that's when you got to look at the college football landscape as a whole and think really long and hard. Where does this team take away the ND and the gold helmets away from them? Are they really that good? That's what I think.
You could say the same thing about LSU, I think.
Yes.
Absolute fraudsters.
Sure.
Matt, any thoughts to wrap up this group?
Nope.
Beautiful. The next one's going to be Kansas and teams that lose to Georgia teams. That's Kansas, number 23. They go from non-ranked to now 5-1, defeating UCF 51-22. That is a real team being built in Lawrence, Kansas. And good golly, next week they go to Oklahoma State, and I think they're going to destroy them.
They really might.
With Oklahoma State putting the work down on Kansas State this week. Kansas State, another fraudster, maybe.
Yeah.
Number 24, Kentucky. Number 25, Miami. Both teams lose. Georgia defeats Kentucky 51-13. We discussed that earlier. Miami loses 24-20, choosing not to kneel the ball and end the game in regulation. Easy peasy, no problem. Instead, it's a 3rd and 10. There's time to kneel the ball out, and then Mario Cristobal runs a run play. Running back fumbles it. There's 26 seconds left on the clock, and Georgia Tech, Haynes King, heroically able to escape the pocket, get the ball out, and amazing play to pull out the upset. It's weird that it comes off the heels of the Bowling Green loss last week. But this is such a just great sign for what Brent Key's trying to build at Georgia Tech. It's like a sign to the kind of funding that Georgia Tech has or doesn't have for their football program is I actually learned from my mother last night, shout out mom, that Georgia Tech reassigned its defensive coordinator to be the safeties coach and like upgraded the safeties coach, I guess, to be DC versus just firing the man. And like, that's unusual. You do not see that at many big football programs, but obviously something about the change worked out for that team. Haynes King played very well, especially when it was money time at the end of the game. And looks like Miami is bad also. Or like you can't beat Georgia Tech. Bad enough. You're at 25. That's about right to me. Any thoughts on these 3 teams, guys? I kind of ran the show there for a second.
I mean, Mario Cristobal in his post-game press conference when straight up asked about the scenario that you just laid out. Like, all you could have done was kneel it out. And he goes, and all Mario did was just rehash the scenario and basically say, and we chose to run the ball. Like, there's no defending it. There's just not. And Mario knows that. I don't know what goes through his mind. I don't know who's in the headset with Mario to help decipher this and be like, hey, we should just kneel, right? Like, this, right? And he didn't. I just don't get it. But shout out also to Mark's point, credit to Georgia Tech for not quitting. They could have easily called it in and quit. It takes 2 sides to do what Georgia Tech did. It takes ineptitude by Miami and it takes want to by Georgia Tech. And they wanted it. They wanted it and they didn't quit. So credit to the Yellow Jackets. That's an awesome win. And that could be a program catapulting win. Beating a ranked team on the road, conference opponent of a blue blood in college football. That's great for them.
It's certainly something we haven't seen out of Georgia Tech in Atlanta in years and years and years. The Jeff Collins run was bad, and the last few years of Paul Johnson did not reach the highs that earlier on he was able to. Matt, any thoughts on hey, let's talk Kansas. Do you have any thoughts on Kansas?
I have a Kansas thought after Matt.
I'll just quickly, my thoughts on Miami. I think the head coach should be fired. Honestly, I don't care how long he's been there. I could care less who's the head coach. That is the worst, most egregious mistake I've ever seen in any football game of all time. There's no defending it. How can you not take the knee, secure the win? Why would you even put yourself in a position to lose the football? I'm still to this moment blown. My mind is blown. I watched the tape again and again. Again, give credit to Georgia Tech. They still had to go 60 plus yards, and the quarterback made 2 incredible throws. Man, if I'm anyone nuts in Miami, how does your team believe in you after that? How does your team
don't
want to play with you?
Did you see the offensive lineman on the sideline, Matt?
With
the camera on him? The Miami offensive lineman, after they fumbled the ball, and I think Georgia Tech scored, he was videoed on the camera was on the offensive lineman, and he's mouthing like, "What are we effing doing?"
Yeah,
like, "What are we effing doing?" And he looks distraught, like he looks almost to tears.
Yeah, I thought he was crying,
dude. Like, that's so. And the Mario Cristobal tenure at Miami has been anything but peaceful so far. And this is just another chapter in that, man. It's bad
This
news.
is
Matt, I
horrendous.
interrupted you. I
No,
apologize.
all great points. I don't care if they were 10-0 and whatever it is. I think they have to call for his head. This is just the most unreal thing
So
I've
bad.
seen in college football. To Kansas, I want to hit on them. Backup quarterback Jason Bean. Obviously, they didn't have their quarterback or starting quarterback Jalen Daniels, but Jason Bean only threw 12 times in this game. They ran the ball for 51 carries, 399 yards. They had almost 3 guys go for 100 plus, averaging almost 8 yards a clip. If this Kansas team gets Jalen Daniels back, who really played well last year in the time that he was playing this year until he got hurt, this can be a very dangerous team and a team that OU needs to look out for on their schedule as well when they play them in the next few weeks. But man, they were just running the ball at will on UCF, almost 400 yards. That's very embarrassing for UCF, especially when you know they're lining up and running it. So congrats to Kansas, well deserved. To be interesting to see how their starting quarterback comes back.
Guys, can I tell you something? I really like Kansas, like a lot. I think they're a good football team, man. Dude, Texas is probably very glad that they already got their Kansas game out of the way before, and with being in at quarterback and didn't have to deal with Daniels. As an OU fan, I'm terrified to play Kansas. That's a good football team. You got to play them in Lawrence too. Like, oh man, they're fun. And I said it last week, I think, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. You need to pay Lance Leipold whatever give him a blank check. Do not let him leave Lawrence, Kansas. You cannot let him leave. That dude knows what he's doing. That team is so much fun and they play for him. Dude, Kansas is real, man. Kansas is real. They're fun.
Kansas is real. Kansas is the third of 3 Big 12 teams to be in the top 25 behind Oklahoma at 5 and Texas at 9. That seems significant to me. That seems, pretty significant what's happening to the Big 12 right now.
We have a bunch of 2 and 3 loss teams in the Big 12. There are a bunch of 2 and 3 loss teams. That's all it is. Yeah.
It's I was speaking with someone the other day about it, and it's like it's a bunch of teams that are 6s or 7s, and then Oklahoma and Texas are like 9s.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just all going to take each other out and open up the lane for OU and Texas to meet again in December. I really believe that, unless Kansas is able to really take it to the Sooners whenever they go to Lawrence later this season. Yeah. So some final games that I want to hit on real fast. Colorado able to beat the Arizona State Sun Devils in the end of regulation, 27-24. Shadur Sanders goes 26 of 42, 239 for a touchdown. Something I like to see about this Colorado team, obviously Arizona State's not good, but I'm not of the opinion that Colorado is very good. So it's still encouraging to see them go into a hostile environment. And Shadur Sanders doesn't have his best game by far. He's got 1 touchdown, but they still score 27. They do what they have to do to pull out the win. Coach Prime, man, he's 4-2. That's better than I would have thought. Yeah, by far. Well, any thoughts on that game, guys?
Yeah, you're Colorado. You're playing with house money at this point, right? Like you were picked to win like 2 games this year in Deion Sanders' first year, and they're winning games. They're 4-2. They got a chance to be bowl eligible. That would be huge in his first year to be bowl eligible. And like you said, Mark, I think we all got caught up because it was fun and they were 2-0 and it was a lot of fun. And I'm fine with that. But we all knew what this team was at the end of the day. At least anyone who paid attention to college football knew what this team was. But hey, man,
to the Program Roundup podcast.
100%. But yeah, dude, I think they can be bowl eligible and have a lot of fun in their bowl game and play their hearts out and win a bowl game and have all the momentum in the world heading into 2024. That's what you need to be looking at if you're Colorado right now.
Yep. Totally agree. I think that Coach Prime stays around at least as long as Shiloh is there. And so there's at least a window here where they could really build something that disrupts the future Big 12. Another game I want to hit on real fast, the most Big 10 game of all time, Nebraska beating Illinois 20-7. Games like this are why when people say it's the SEC and the Big 10, I tell them you are wrong. It's the SEC.
Matt.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
that was a
didn't really
period,
pay
baby.
Sorry, I'm looking at this game and I'm just thinking this is just a classic Big Ten low scoring game, a lot of defense, or really just the offense is not being very good, or really just two bad teams going at it in the Big Ten. Everyone was really excited about Matt Rule coming in, his recruiting classes, all this, and really just hasn't come to much this year so far, being 3-3 and beating a 2-4 Illinois team. So not too much to say on this game, just a classic Big Ten game.
Yeah, Matt Rule is interesting to me because I think he is a good head coach. But if you recall, if you haven't, go back and watch. We did an episode with Dari Noka of SEC Network. We interviewed him, and me and Mark asked him what the deal with Nebraska was, like what their problem was, why they can't seem to figure it out. And Dari so eloquently laid it all out. And one of those main reasons was they separated themselves from their recruiting base. They recruited Texas so well. And Matt Rule, when he was in Baylor, was able to recruit Texas very, very well. I don't know if Matt Rule can repair that Lincoln, Nebraska to Texas relationship. If he can, then maybe they'll have a pulse. I don't think he can. So I think they're going to be stuck in a perpetual cycle of being second, third class in the Big Ten and never really, I mean, maybe they win 9 games one year under Matt Rule just as a fluke. But I mean, I don't know, man. I think Nebraska has much deeper problems than who the head coach is.
This is such a good conversation to have at the very end of a recap pod,
I know, right?
But I think it's the difference between why Oklahoma is going to ascend going into the SEC and Nebraska really fell off going into the Big Ten is Oklahoma is still going to have a trip into the heart of Texas every single year. We are playing a team in Texas every single year, two times with A&M. So we will never be far from that recruiting hotbed and being able to pull guys in. That pipeline will never die unless Oklahoma just goes through a terrible stretch of football. We've seen it through 3 head coaches. Let's just say 3. Yeah. Whereas Nebraska, like you said, they cut off that talent base. Suddenly they're trying to compete in Ohio, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania.
They can't do that
with schools. They just can't. They're new blood there. They're never going to be the same thing. And
those kids don't care what you did in the 90s. They don't care.
So that's all I have on that. And that's all we have for the show. But first, I need you guys as MVPs for the week. Matt Gann, non-OU MVP.
Non-OU. Got it.
Yeah, non-OU, man, that's really tough. I'm going to go with Georgia's Carson Beck. I think he played on another level this year. Sorry, not this year. This past weekend. Again, everyone just hyping Kentucky. They're 5-0. Mark Stoops has got this team rolling. Do this year in and year out. I think this was really his coming out party, his best game of the year for the Georgia quarterback. And again, solidifying Georgia as number 1 and really a step up above the rest of the college football landscape. He had a pretty phenomenal day. So I'll go Carson Beck, Georgia.
That is a great one. Mason, hit me.
I'm going with the Kansas running game. Matt rattled off the stats earlier. Almost 400 yards rushing the ball. Your quarterback, who is a big part of your running game as well, your starting quarterback is out. I mean, Kansas is the real deal. I've said it before. I'll say it again. They're real, and that rushing attack is dangerous. Also, UCF, man. People want us to believe that they were going to be a Big 12 title contender this year. Wild. Okay, I'm done.
All right, that's a great one. And I'm going to go a little different with mine. My MVP for the week is Alex Grinch. I am loving how fun all of these down to the wire USC games are. Oh my goodness, Caleb Williams is forced to pull a rabbit out of the hat every single week. And here's going to be my most favorite thing is when Caleb Williams claims the Heisman Trophy for all of his highlight plays, but is sitting next to Dylan Gabriel, who is there because he led a 12-0 college or OU team to the college football playoff. Meanwhile, he's got a game next week and Caleb will have just played in like the Holiday Inn Bowl. It's different. It's levels to this shit. And Alex Grinch doesn't get that. And that's why he's my MVP, man. It's all about the popcorn factor with that guy.
It's awesome.
Alex Grinch, my MVP. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, fellas?
Alex Grinch is also Fox Sports' MVP as well, because that's the only reason people are watching USC games is to see the tight endings. Keeps the people in, keeps the ratings in. You know, yeah, that's how he does it.
100%.
He's got to be getting a cut of Joel Klatt's contract or something. That's just,
oh my god,
yeah, got to be.
You know that Lincoln is.
Oh yeah.
Matt, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, great week. Should be a really good one. A lot of top ranked matchups as well. So looking forward to another week.
Bye week for the Sooners, not a bye week for us. We'll be back for you this week.
Bang bang. Program roundup next week, just as good as this one, at least, hopefully. And if you're still here, oh my God, you got to do us a favor and check out thefanstop.com. The Fanstop is the exclusive sponsor of the Program Roundup, and they offer College Game Shirt of the Month Club. Every single month, you will get a new shirt. You will get a new long sleeve. You will get a new hoodie, whatever they're doing that month, sent to your door, directly to your door. You don't have to go anywhere to pick this thing up. They look good. They feel good. They're officially licensed. They've got over 50 schools or around 50 schools. I don't know the exact number. We're going to get that figured out. And if you use our code Guyz, PGUYZ, you're going to get 15% off of your first 3 month subscription, or 3 months of your subscription, or you'll get 15% off one of their new game day polos. They're, like I said, around 50 schools. They look good. They feel good. I've personally seen and felt the material, and it looks as good as you'll get at any store. So absolutely go check out thefanstop.com. Use our code Guyz, that's PGUYZ, for 15% off just about anything you're going to get there. Matt Gann, take us out.
Keep pushing it, baby.
3, 2, 1.
There's not one guy, one person in the history of this program that's bigger than the program.
What's better than this? Guys being